football players by their nature are superstitious. A lot of football players have superstitions that they do before a game and things on the lead up to a game. And Alistair Johnston is no different. He has one superstition and he reckons it was all at fault for his first loss in the Celtic top. Barry Ferguson can't not stop talking about Celtic. We're going to talk about him in a minute. Mr. Meltdown and myself is at it again, and Gustav and Big Ohm have apologised for their red cards in Feyenoord and Rotterdam the other evening. So it is back to the old school format for the next couple of days, so bear with me on the channel. Alistair Johnston tasted defeat as a Celtic player for the first time, and he put the blame on the club's away kit. He reckons that's the reason his impressive record has disappeared. The Canadian defender was jovial despite the loss to Feyenoord in his European debut for the club, but he was serious. He said, look, Celtic need to step up the level in the Champions League. It can be difficult to deal with. He said, but he reckons it was the kit that was to blame. He said, look, we need to stick to the green and white hoops so we don't lose again, whilst wearing the famous white and green Holmes top. He said, we haven't lost. Johnston was arguably saved by an offside flag and the game came to a stop. But he said, look, when you have Liam Scales beside me, who was Celtic's best player on the evening, and the night was made much more difficult for both Brendan Rodgers and the team with red cards to Gustav Lagerbielke and Big Odin Ohm. Talking about both those players, both players have extended their apologies to Celtic teammates after receiving red cards in the 2-0 loss to Feyenoord, leaving the Scottish champions with just 9 men on the field. The defeat was absolutely, it was terrible. The way that we collapsed in the second half. Like Lagerbielke, he is a rookie. The central defender from Sweden was handed somewhat a contentious second yellow card, and Ohm was given a straight red without even looking at VAR. He was given a straight red, which is, I think, the referee was a bit. Yeah, he had his studs up. He had his studs at the end of the day. He had his studs shown, and if it was for Feyenoord, you'd be wanting a red card all day long. 2 players that he felt sorry for was obviously the South Korean winger Yang. He was given a rest. He was very supportive. You thought, he might have got on and done a bit more. We have to get over it as a team and be professional, said the players. They have to be professional, but come on, 2 red cards in the one game. Before the red cards, Celtic, we all thought that we could do something. The first half, we thought, if this is the best team in the group, we can certainly do something in this tie. We could certainly get a draw, I thought. You could see from the supporters in the back that they were giving us. After the red cards, some players still hung on to hope. It seemed to frustrate Brendan Rodgers after the match, and he blamed the inexperience of both players for the sending off. Tell me your thoughts in the comments about that. Do you think it's the inexperience of the players? Tell me in the comments about what you think about the transfer window now that it's closed and we have to settle with the players we have, and the fact that Brendan Rodgers did say 1 week before the window closed that he would rather bring in some experienced players. And I think there seems to be a bit odds between Celtic and Brendan Rodgers just now when it comes to the type of players that we really need at Celtic. We need to get Phillips back on the pitch. We need to get him ahead of the Lazio game. We need to get Cameron Carter-Vickers, although it's unlikely Cameron Carter-Vickers will be match fit for that game. So it looks like we'll have to go with Phillips and Liam Scales, and Liam Scales has just had nothing but plaudits since that game. He's a player that was minutes away from going back to Aberdeen, and by the grace of God, he's actually been given his chance at Celtic at the highest level, and he's one player that is definitely putting a marker down to his first team position. Talking about first team positions and talking about players that Barry Ferguson would like to see leave Celtic, because let's face it, I don't think he thinks that his old team, the Rangers, are going to do anything against Celtic this season. Although Celtic are out one of the cups already, so they've got basically a free run if they can win that trophy, which I think it'll be hard for them to do because there's a lot of good competition still left in that cup. Anyway, Barry Ferguson and Mark Goody have been suggesting that Ange Postecoglou will look to sign midfielder Rio Hatate for Tottenham Hotspur this coming January. He said, look, He says, Ange has been away from the club a couple of months now. You don't generally come in the first year and steal players from your old club, but Rio Hatate is one player that is underrated in Scotland. He's a dynamic midfield player who has goals in him, says Barry Ferguson. He says, of course, anyone who leaves the Scottish Premiership going to the English Premier League is making a huge step up in gulf of quality. This is probably why Barry Ferguson never played in the English Premiership, did he? Or correct me on that. Did he actually play in the English Premiership? I don't think he did, didn't he? He was never good enough. Never good enough. If you look at Celtic players in the past, like Virgil van Dijk, who's went on to be a success in the Premier League down south. So I think that Rio Hatate could also follow him. But Barry Ferguson said, look, there were clubs looking at him in the window. If there was clubs looking at him, they should have made an offer, because I think Celtic would have bitten their hand off. He has turned heads. Amid the contract talks, he could still be sold in the summer, says Barry Ferguson. He's the type of player I see Ange Postecoglou coming in for. Strikes me as an unwritten rule between Postecoglou and Celtic. You don't come in for any other players. You don't come in for them within a year. Don't unsettle them. I don't think it was an unwritten rule. I think there was more something put in a contract clause somewhere. But we never know. We never know. People have suggested it has been that, but there's been nothing to suggest that it will. And let's face it, Ange Postecoglou doesn't want to ruin his legacy by coming in and stripping Celtic of players just after he walks out the door. Barry Ferguson went on to say, I think he's one player that will go down to the Premier League, no problem. I would expect Ange Postecoglou to come in January. I would like him to come in January, says Barry Ferguson. Barry Meltdown Ferguson wants Ange to come in and take players away from Celtic because it gives his team a chance. He says it gives us a slight hope. He's the type of player that can go down there and do well. I want Ange to come and get him. He says big changes Postecoglou has made. Look, it's a big morale boost down at Spurs, and adding to that at midfield would be absolutely fantastic as far as Barry Ferguson has been concerned. Tell me what your thoughts are on Barry Ferguson in the comment section. Tell me what you think about the fact that Alistair Johnston thinks it was the away top that was the unlucky thing the other night. It is a nice top, but Celtic should always be playing in green and white hoops when they're away from home, when they can. And Alistair Johnston says that was the big issue as far as he was concerned. He does have a ritual that he does before games, as does most players. And I think it was a bit more than the top that was the problem the other night. Gustav has apologised, as had Big Ohm. They've both apologised to the whole team and said, look, we're sorry, it will not happen again. So make sure that you give the video a big thumbs up. Thank you if you've stuck around to the end of the video. I will get back to the normal format in the next couple of days. Make sure that you stick around because I might be doing a live. If not tonight, it will be at some point this week. We'll do a Friday night live anyway. On that note, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans all around the world.
Lit. Roll up to the